Good afternoon. This is the end of the Chinese New Year, the first 8 days. I'm taking this time this year to get myself back into the area of counseling psychology, where I have finished my degrees in 1974 and practiced until 1977 before myself and my wife have ventured into another business. But after this 50 years, where I have felt I have not left the area of counseling psychology. Instead, during this last 45-year plus of the business activity involving the world south, from Brazil to Europe to China and back to the US, where I felt I once wanted so much to establish the work of counseling psychology under the umbrella of educational psychology in 1974 and finishing up in 1976. I really feel I'm coming back here with a new perspective, a new approach, and perhaps also a new field of psychology. In 1977, during my time at University of Wisconsin at Platteville and my practice at University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, it was just the time and period of the beginning of the multicultural education involving the entry, affirmative action in the ethnic minority Americans into the American campus. So at that very same time, working also as a counselor for the international students and a coach at University of Wisconsin at Platteville in the area of soccer, where I also have played 4 years. This combination of international color along with the American domestic multiculturalism is just beginning of a important time emerge, where I felt that I have created a counseling advising system called 3 Cs, which stands for communication dynamics, and also with the communication Analystica, and also with a very important factor I have added, the cultural sphere. In this case, important the cultural sphere, meaning the university surroundings, how I have worked and helped guiding, counseling, and advising the students while they at UW Platteville under the system of the counseling center, as well as the foreign student office, plus the multicultural educational center at UW Platteville. I would like to elaborate more because of this development of the 3 Cs. Today, in 2024, after the 50 years global travel, thinking, reflecting, I've never really abandoned the field of psychology. More so, I was seeking actually a doctoral program in the area of counseling psychology without heading into the area of therapeutic psychology. So I would like to put in the emphasis by the pictures I will put in the screen. You'll be starting with the psychology round and square. And it is also very interesting as an overseas Chinese, where I have left China 1948, where I was born in Shanghai, and then moved to Macau, Hong Kong in 1952. A little bit of emphasis about the language by hearing, or the tonality, tones, was very important. I do have a very good command of 5 languages, and I will explain a little bit by putting the images and the postings of the a bit of my storytelling about my language, about my birth in 1948, where I have my the mother tongue of Cantonese. My mother is Cantonese by growing up in the next door province called Guangxi. And my father is from the province of Zhejiang, Yuyao, present day the city of Ningbo, a suburb, but was also working in Shanghai. My father had attended Sorbonne in Paris and came back to China with a great deal of fluency with his command in French. And then in our household, while Cantonese was spoken, or broken Shanghainese was spoken by my father and my siblings. I have two older sisters, 5-6 years apart, and my brother Peter, a year older than me, born 1947. But collectively, in the linguistic hearing, before I have any interactions, there were servants and workers in the house who were from Shanghai, who were from the neighboring area called Pudong on the other side of on the Bund. We have workers and maids who are from Suzhou and also from Hangzhou. So in this region of the Yangtze River with Shanghai, there are other people in the area who have involved with my first 5 years upbringing, including my wet nurse, who is not from Shanghai. My family left 1948-49, but had left me behind because I was being nourished by my wet nurse. And later on in 1952, I have returned to Hong Kong by way of Macau and joining my family. From 52 to 62, we have spent most of our time and upbringing, also education receiving from Macau. One of the wishes for my father's mother, my paternal grandmother, asking my mother to put the children into gender separation schools. And subsequently, my sister had gone on to the Roman Catholic orders of the Order of the Canossas from Italy, and the boys had gone into the school belonging to the order from Torino, Italy, the Salesians, mostly known around the world to be with one of the best educator, Don Bosco. I have then attended school in Macau with the Salesians from the age 8 till I was 14. 62, then we have departed to Sao Paulo, Brazil. And after Brazil, I have continued with the Salesian schools in the Sao Paulo state, in the midpoint, a city called Lorena, is between Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. It was a very exciting time, this time and period in Brazil, because the new capital of Brasilia, and then also with the transition, the old capital city of Rio de Janeiro, now in Brasilia. Let me go back a little bit to my early education in Macau. At the age of 8, we were baptized Roman Catholic by the Jesuit order. I remember very well. The Santa was one of the early Italian missionary known as Matteo Ricci. And Father Minelli and Father Luis Ruiz from Spain. Father Minelli from Italy, and Father Ruiz is from Spain. And just about 20 years ago, we met up with Father Ruiz. Just talk about the linguistically, when I came back, when I left Macau, I was speaking basically one language, one dialect, Cantonese. Although hearing-wise, I could understand the other dialect from Guangxi and from Shanghai. My sisters speak Shanghai between themselves, and my mother and my aunt speak Guangxi language on with their own group. Going back to a little bit of the language and how language have facilitated what I have developed in the multicultural, cross-cultural, in the area of psychology. Because one of my earliest language involving the Salesians was that I was learned Latin and Greek. I was even being laughing after my sister said, "Well, where did you learn Greek?" There was never a spoken Greek language at that time. Definitely. Again, going back to the sound and tonality. I value the singing of the Gregorian chants taking place in Roman Catholic churches. When we were youngsters serving Mass, at that time, when you're going one-on-one, a priest in one of the assistants going to any of the regional church, even the cloister area, the response of the Latin Mass has to be very clear, because between me and the priest, there were the only sound communication in that time and period. I guess when I was selected to serve Mass outside of school, looking back, I take pride that maybe I did open my mouth and I have said my Latin words a little bit better than the others. This age and the influence with the Latin is one thing, but what is most glorious is when you can sing or you share the singing or the Gregorian chant during the weekends on high holidays like Christmas, like Easter. That singing had enriched my learning of the words in Latin. Now I'm looking back in a broader arena in the area of psychology. It is still amazing when we look at under the Christian influence of the time of Christ in Palestine, Judea, were they speaking Hebrew? I don't think so. Most likely they were speaking Aramaic. And if by even now I'm guessing Aramaic is a combined language between the Hebrew and Arabic, and where the Aramaic sound had moving northwards by way of, quote unquote, my patron saint, right? St. Paul, Saul, who is from Turkey. And this change of languages moving from Judea, Palestine, up to Greek region, and then they started the Greco-Roman period from the Greeks eventually into Rome and then into the Byzantine, when the entire Roman Catholic Church was adopted by the emperors. In my thinking, the extension of this language, the transfer of the language, still carry on very much so by the tonality and by the singing or the humming or the Gregorian chant in a very mild demeanor. Nevertheless, that particularly sounds of the Gregorian chants had increased the exposure of the Latin language. I put this in a hypothesis, but eventually we can all search and seeking greater evidence. And that is why my emphasis of the tongue, the hearing, more than speaking it, is equally important than learning a language, speaking the words. Nevertheless, this is how I have started today, this year, in the use of my formally created the 3 C's: communication dynamic, communication analytica, and then the cultural sphere, which is all C, C, and C. And I put them all together under the umbrella today and under the psychology named round and square. This is where another verbal or nonverbal learning. As an overseas Chinese left Macau, let's put it this way, 1962, after traveling 50 days plus from Hong Kong to Singapore to Penang, Malaysia, and then cross over the Malacca Strait into the Indian Ocean, heading into Mauritius, bypassing the island of Madagascar, and then landed in Mozambique, the Portuguese colony in East Africa. Then we went further down to Port Elizabeth in South Africa, Durban, and Cape Town. And from Cape Town, we moved westwards, crossing the Atlantic to Brazil. But in between this trip, we took a little dip further south to an area where used to be a group of islands called Tristan da Cunha. And those islands, one of the few last islands, were going under and sinking. One of the reasons for our trip to go down to that direction to pick up 3 scientists. They came on board and then we ventured back on to and landed in Rio de Janeiro. But our final landing is the city of Santos in the state of Sao Paulo, which is about 2 hours from the capital city of the state of Sao Paulo, also named Sao Paulo. It's very interesting. Just this last week, I shared with some of the Chinese colleagues where my name come from. Yes, I was baptized in around 58, and my brother and I were given the name Peter and Paul, and I'm the youngest of the 4 siblings. And that name actually showing up many times. My Chinese friend asked me, why Paul? I said, I don't know why, but I was baptized Catholic. Now I find out one of the biggest, most visited landmark in Macau is the facade of a ruined cathedral. In Cantonese, they call it Dai San Ba, or Big 3 Ba, the sound of Ba. In actuality, the cathedral was called San Paulo or St. Paul. So that's one piece of the linguistic, not puzzle, but just to play the word when you're knowing it, it becomes a lot of fun when people ask you a question and you end up having a long stretch of names, origin, where they're from, you know. And actually, Paul's name in Latin means small, from Paulus, Pauli. So the step I'm moving forward, this will be just the very first presentation showing, I was showing repeating many times using the round and square. The psychology round and square over this period by my return visit to China, and with more contemplation, more study, and more research of the Chinese psychology, philosophy, thinking, and coming down to a very basic, most primitive. I'm going back to the study from induced by Brazilians, Paulo Freire, whose word is called conscientization, conscience. And in conscience, in Chinese, translating into learn some. I'm using Cantonese now, just because speaking of a kind heart. And from this development, where I call the conscientization of Paulo Freire, in Portuguese, conscientização, I have put this into as a one word with Zen value, one word Zen. So when I'm reflecting on the Chinese culture and searching and seeking, what am I, where am I, what do I belong, the many symbolism of the round and square come into play. And the more I think, and the more I have been thinking, morphos, changing from what I have in the 3C, dynamics, the Analystica, and the cultural sphere, can put into, very simply, into the area of the psychology of round and square. At this point, I also want to stretch a little bit of the evolution of the study of psychology. Maybe I'm just highlighting, not skipping, but I'm just going through what I have perceived from the early on, the Freudian psychology, which are giving us a lot of the discipline of psychology. And before him, there were phrenology, or working on the human brains, actually drilling in the human brains, or to a large extent, also the hypnosis. Even up into my 70s, getting my master's degrees, I still have colleagues who actually gone on to using hypnosis as therapy. So, but from the Freudian psychology, I pick on the first bit of the culture. I call it cultural psychology by the travel of Gustav Jung, who did not really follow the Freudian psychoanalysis because he accepted and practiced along with Freud in Vienna. But with the war and all the development, and Gustav Jung is a Swiss himself, and culturally he went on eastwards and brought back another group of thinking on his patterns or the element he used in a more cultural, anthropological perspective. That's how I think. But over time, when psychoanalysis started moving into New York, coming to the East Coast of America, whatever Sigmund Freud had done in Vienna, I salute him as the creator of our field of psychology. But because he was Jewish ethnicity, and he was the first ethnic Jew medical doctor accepted in the medical school in Vienna. But since then, the Freudian psychology, I'm moving a little bit quicker. I think we're coming into, for general use, more popular use. There are many names like Alfred Adler, Rollo May. One of my most admired psychologists is Carl Rogers, and also very interesting. One of the most influential elements, or the only time in all these years psychology ever had touched bases with Asia, with Japan in particular, was the book written by Erich Fromm and Suzuki. Even though it seems to be two men creating two monologues, and nevertheless, that has the influence in me, and by me raising the question, have we not the area of the study of psychology in China? And this brings into a very interesting perspective. I'm not here to accuse the West. With the rise of the ocean power, the military power from the Iberian, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the territorial gain in America and Africa, Vasco da Gama came to India, Pedro Alvarez Cabral to Brazil, and in between Columbus. By the way, Columbus, by my own discovery, was never Italian, but I have no reason to suspect that many Italian from Venice at that time put themselves into the Iberian Peninsula with the engagement to the kings and queens of Spain and Portugal and the ocean exploration. So Columbus may have adapted as an Italian, but his real name is Colón, and he's from a town in Portugal named Cuba. There's only Cuba in Portugal that's the same as in Cuba in the Americas. And you look at all the vicinity of the Cuban in the islands of the Caribbeans, naming after saints, and very much the same. The Cuba in Portugal have the same vicinity with the same name. By watching YouTube, by learning more about the Portuguese culture, Columbus supposed to be the illegitimate child between the Count or the Duke of Beja in that region of Portugal, and his wife is coming from the Judaic converso family named Sarko. Sarko was one of the explorer, also discovered the island of Madeira. But all in all, talking about all the interchangings, almost like the subject about human psychology and back to the psychology round and square. The entire mindset is to trust all things, suspect all things, and even now, with this development of the psychology round and square, and boiling down to the very basic, even in seeing the Chinese unit of one from I Ching, from other writings, the one looking as a horizontal or vertical, there's always the link of the Tian sky, or Di is earth, and the one also in between is the center realm, almost like a sphere, and that is called Zhong in Mandarin, or Zhongguo, the country of the center. From this, the unitary one, we already have the two extreme polars, sky and earth, and Zhongguo, or people from Zhongguo, we are the man in the center. I will go on exploring more from the configuration, from I Ching, from the Bakgua, from the Chinese diagrams. I think you and me, my audience who are engaged in cross-cultural psychology or multicultural psychology, or even regional psychology, can find the psychology around the square is basically a new exploration, just like the discovery of the navigations in Portugal and Spain. And I am just beginning to find there are pre-existing psychological learnings, and in this balance of the human mind, basically psychology, what have Freud done is dealing with the human anxiety, from anxiety that can be coming into an area of hysterical, and those are dividing lines about neurosis and psychosis, and how severe your mental disturbance, all of that. The way I'm approaching the psychology round and square is an open book to all of us. As a matter of fact, I have decided to open this group of study under the umbrella called Openbook, because there's so many areas in our past that we can find and rediscover, no less than the Italian Renaissance, the rebirth, when they find out other elements, other qualities, and knowledge from the Greek era. Even though the Greco-Roman is almost like in the one unit from our perspective, and then had brought eventually into the Enlightenment in all Europe. And from that point, evolving into the Industrial Revolution, scientific exploration from all the studies started with Renaissance. So this could be very much a Renaissance. It's not for the Europeans, Westerners, will be very much for the Chinese and ethnic Chinese everywhere to share and explore the immense data opportunity in the psychology of round and square. And by saying the big data, by saying the AI and the quantum count, this is going to become a very interesting arena for the many of us who want to join me, to explore, to share, or to comment, to add or subtract, and be critical. I think learning is an open field, not restricted to myself. I'm not presenting the psychology round and square is a method, is some sort of mechanism that we can practice and get results. I am sharing, again, at age 76, 50 years after my first development of the 3 Cs, and I'm opening up this to you all. Happy New Year, and love to have contact with you in the future.